Good afternoon everybody, and welcome back to Queenie of London. Today I'm in a very pleasant, hot, sunny Putney. There's Putney Bridge, and I'm going to give you a little tour of the area, a very relaxing summer vibe tour. I'm going to actually start the tour with a shot of this church over here, which is St Mary's. I'll throw in a little bit of history on this tour and explain my reasons for giving it and our end destination in a bit.
So when we got back to our place we were staying, he had to pack.
So up there you obviously have Putney High Street, and there's St Mary's. Now St Mary's is particularly important to Putney because from the 28th of October until the 9th of November 1647, men from Oliver Cromwell's new model army from the English Civil War met in this very church to discuss the future of England and of the government. The more radical of these men were known as the Levellers, and I've got a fascination with these guys. These put forward a sort of proto-constitution, and they called this the Agreement of the People. They sold the Agreement of the People in pamphlet form, and it was doing incredibly well circulation-wise. So it was this document, this pamphlet, that sort of in effect forced the debates. They're of huge significance because not only do they pave the way for many of the civil liberties we enjoy today, but they saw ordinary civilian men, soldiers who had volunteered to fight in the Civil War. It saw them take on men that were supposedly their social superiors. Now, these debates were transcribed by a very clever man called William Clark, and they are a significant 17th century document, one of very few documents that demonstrate social history, and they were lost, can you believe, until they were found by a scholar in 1891 in a library at Oxford. Now inside the church, I'm going to have to find it on my bit of paper because it's an inscription and I'm not very good at learning lines. Inside the church, there's a description of the wall by one of the leading levellers called Thomas Rainsborough, and it reads, "For really I think that the poorest he that is in England hath a life to live as the greatest he." This sentiment sort of epitomises the equality that the levellers sought. They believed that the House of Commons should have authority to hold the king, the monarch, to account, and to hold the House of Lords to account. These ideas were obviously opposed by the grandees, the elites in the army, and they maintained that only people of property had a right to determine the laws of the land and the future of the country. Inside the church, there's a permanent exhibition that you can come and see all the time, all year long, about the Putney debate, which demonstrates its significance to our country. So I hope you've enjoyed having a little look at St Mary's there. I'll leave links in my description of where you can find information, and we'll now continue on our way along the bridge. So this is the south side of the bridge, and we're going to go all the way along to the north side towards Fulham High Street, Putney Bridge approach, and obviously Bishop's Park, which is over there. Peeking through the trees you can see another church. Now this bridge is the only bridge in Great Britain that has a church at either end. The church peeking through the trees there is All Saints of Fulham. So I'm going to get on my way and we'll cross the bridge. So over on that side you can see the bridge that the tubes go over, the District line, District and Circle, and just behind the church is this lovely building here which is residential, I believe, and at night time there's blue lights going down them steps. I call that the step building. So why are we walking this way today? Well, I'm showing you what Fulham fans, such as myself, call the Green Mile. Now, it's not because we feel that we're heading for impending doom over there when we go and see a game at Craven Cottage, but it's because, as you can see, this walk is incredibly leafy, lush and pleasant, and it's also consequently about a mile long. I think I'm going to stop here and explain to you about Putney Bridge. That over there, by the way, is having some work on it. That is Putney Pier. And also, while I'm standing here, reminiscent of earlier events, this is where the Oxford-Cambridge boat race begins, and it has begun here ever since the route was revised in 1845. Now, a long time prior to the beginning of the boat race, a gentleman called Sir Robert Walpole, who was consequently to become England's first Prime Minister, he, in 1720, was coming back from Kingston in that direction, having seen George I, the King, and he needed to get back to the Commons for a debate. Now, obviously, you have to cross this river to get to the Commons in the most quickest way. Now, at that time, there was no bridge, so access was by ferry only, and the ferry for Walpole was parked over there, moored over there, and the waterman was having a drink at the Swan. So Walpole got very aerated, and he had to go a very long way round to get back to the Commons, completely missing his debate, but he still got to be Prime Minister the following year. He did resolve, because of his frustration, that a bridge would be built here, and it was, and it opened in November that very year. So it was good that an MP actually did something he promised. At this time when it opened, it was entirely made of wood and was known as the Fulham Bridge as well as Putney Bridge, and it was the only bridge in London apart from the original London Bridge and Kingston Bridge, but that was way out at that time. That wasn't considered part of London. Now, as you can imagine, a wooden bridge would sustain a lot of damage over time, and I believe it was really demolished by a barge actually colliding into it. So something had to be done. So the London Metropolitan Board of Works took over the bridge and said that it needs to be made of stone. Work began in this in 1879, and we'll walk across that very bridge now. I forgot to mention actually, the wooden bridge that was here before this one, before it sustained so much damage it had to be destroyed, you had to pay a toll to get across it. Now, at that time, this area suffered from big freezes, so this part of the Thames would ice over. So Londoners would relish the opportunity to ice skate over and avoid the toll.
He probably knows it.
The designer of this bridge was a fantastic man who did so much for this area of London in particular, whose name was Sir Joseph Bazalgette. He was a civil engineer and he was the chief engineer at the London Metropolitan Board of Works. They asked him to design the bridge. He was hugely significant because not only did he build bridges like this one, he actually implemented a sewage system for London when it needed it most. London was suffering from severe cholera epidemics and the loss of life was quite incredible, so something had to be done. Bazalgette, he devised a sewer network, and under this bridge are 2 of Bazalgette's 5 outfall sewage systems. He also made improvements to Albert Bridge in Chelsea that we saw the other day in my previous video. He built Hammersmith Bridge. It was a lot to do with the Victoria Embankment, the Chelsea Embankment. So he was a great guy who did much to improve our city. Now the bridge was widened to 3 lanes. As you can see, it needed it in 1933. We're now approaching the lovely All Saints Church, and there's been a church on that site, that very site, for at least 900 years. And there's always been a very strong connection with the Bishops of London. And you'll see why as we explore Bishop's Park. The church in its form there is from 1880 and is the work of Sir Arthur Blomfield. Movie fans amongst you will know that this is the church they used in the original Omen film, where I think it was is it a lightning conductor falls from the top of the steeple and impales a priest, obviously an actor priest, who was also seen running through Bishop's Park. So there's a claim to fame for All Saints Church. So I've now reached the other side of the bridge. And we're going to go into Bishop's Park. So I'm now standing at the very beginning of the park in Pyoors Bank Gardens. You can access it from this side of the bridge by the steps by the bus stop, which I did, or you can access it via subway from the other side of the river where the Premier Inn is. Now this bit is an extension of the original park and was opened to the public in 1900. That mock Tudor pavilion there, which is part of All Saints Church, I think, they have offices in there and you can get refreshments. That was originally something called Craven Cottage, but that was demolished and this building was put there. There are 4 of these sculptures in the park. 4 of these sculptures in the park. They were commissioned by James Wedgwood and placed here for the 1953 coronation of Elizabeth I. So that's rather nice to see them as we celebrate her platinum year. And I believe this sculpture here was added in the 60s. Mother and child affection. I think I read that was called. That's not really my thing. Yes, so this is Pyoors Bank Pavilion. Very pretty. Bishop's Park was opened by the London County Council in 1893. And when it opened, this river wall, which I'm about to come onto, was already here. It was obviously designed to protect the original meadows, as they were called then, from flooding. And the chap who designed them, Joseph Mears, was the father of the Mears brothers who founded Chelsea Football Club. And I love this view, especially when there's a bus going over. It just makes it. So the land was formerly owned by the Ecclesiastical Commission as Lords of the Manor of Fulham. The land was known as Bishop's Walk, Bishop's Meadow and West Meadow, and it was given to Fulham District Board of Works on condition that it be maintained for public leisure and recreation. I'm going to keep quiet for a bit so you can enjoy some nice views of the sunny Bishop's Park. Now this area here, this circular area, when I was growing up I remember a bandstand. Now over here coming up we have one of my favourite things. I'll pause here a minute because it's a good vantage point to talk to you about the bridge and these banks here, which show you that at one point there was a moat. This is part of the original 14.5 acres of grounds to Fulham Palace, and it has been said that the moat was the longest moat in England. At one time they let this grow really wild because there was lots of lovely wildflowers, but I read that the Fulham Palace Trust have cleared that now in order that you can see where the moat was. I just think this is so magical. This is proper Brothers Grimm kind of stuff. Now, what we're going to be looking at is a Gothic porter's lodge, and it's now called the Gothic Lodge. I'll give you a better view in a moment, but I'll stand here just so I can explain. It was designed, it's thought, by one of the bishop's wives, Mrs. Hawley, and built in 1815. And you can see the Hawleys' coat of arms above the front door. And that right there is my dream house, complete with turret. And I'm quite short, so I think I'll be fine in there. This is something out of a storybook, isn't it? It's just beautiful. Evidence of the moat. And here's the coat of arms. Is it above the front door in there? I don't really want to go in there. There it is. Picture time. So we're now in the grounds of the Fulham Palace. Now this has been the historic home to the bishops of London for more than 1,300 years. Yes, you heard that right, 1,300 years. These men were known as princes of the church. So while this may look like your standard manor house, that's why it became known as Fulham Palace. The original house was abandoned in the 13th century, and the foundations for what now exist began at that time. It's been added to and changed according to the styles of each of the bishops that have lived here. So Fulham Palace is a real mix of architectural styles. and it's set in 13 acres of gardens. Now the courtyard that we're about to see is the oldest part and dates around 1495. I've got it all to myself. It's practically like I live here. Now, after the Reformation, members of the clergy were allowed to marry, so this became a family home to the bishops and their wives and children. These bishops' wives had an instrumental impact on society, all on their own accord. They had interests and they supported philanthropic causes. One example of this is Louise Crichton. She was concerned with the decline in living standards and opened nearby Crichton House. She was also an active campaigner for women's rights. Also was Catherine Tate, who campaigned for the welfare of children and people in poverty. Each bishop has shaped the story of the palace and left lasting historical legacies. Bishop Porticus, for example, and I love this story, met here with abolitionists Hannah More and William Wilberforce as part of their campaign to abolish the slave trade. Throughout its long life, this palace has always been a place of refuge, starting with the bishops who used it as a summer retreat from the overcrowded and dirty cities. It entertained visitors as prominent as Queen Elizabeth I and George III. And in 1919, it became a hospital for wounded soldiers, sort of like the hospital in Pat Barker's Regeneration. And in the Blitz in 1940, 200 people stayed in there after their homes were destroyed. The last bishop to use this as a home for himself was in 1973. And they're closing the gates on me, so that was good timing. I'm glad I caught it. Now, what I find really fascinating about this is I've had to write this down, is archaeological excavations have shown that this whole site has been occupied since the Neolithic period. A long time later, Roman settlers thrived here because they had easy access to the other side of the river and consequently trade. There was a power struggle between Saxon kings for control of this land before it was bequeathed to the Bishop Walher, who was a medieval Bishop of London. And here ends that lesson.
He's coming on Sunday. He didn't want to come. It's a bit social tonight. Lots of babies coming on Sunday morning. And then it's a bit poor. Mariana's just going to Margate. She said, oh, I have Margate, but when she goes to Margate in a long time. Anyway, to be honest, we'll have plenty of pizza.
Now this has been here for a really, really long time as well. This is the cafe of Bishop's Park. And when I was growing up, I remember at the back they had a cage, a very, very big cage, and it was full of birds. It's not there anymore. Through there you can see tennis courts.
Careful, I don't want you. Ready? Careful, I don't want you
Now the park actually continues way over there. It's a massive playing field, and then here you have sand and a pool, which is beautiful. This has been here. Oh, it's been regenerated lately, but this has been here since when I was little. So many happy memories here. I love all this detailing. You just don't get this in parks now. So like oldie worldy Gothic, beautiful. And there's a boating lake at the back with the fountain. It used to be a boating lake. I don't know if it still is. Way over there. But I am now going to follow the Fulham fans route and go out here. These are Bishop's Park mansions, and they are beautiful apartment blocks. Oh, I should mention as well, actually, in Fulham it got cut off and they were closing it, so I didn't get to go in the gardens. But they're very, very famous botanic gardens. One of the bishops who moved to the manor house, he was an explorer and he represented the Church of England abroad. And he brought back with him loads of exotic flowers and planted them in the garden. There's also outside theatre events in the summertime. I believe they're showing Peter Pan on Sunday, which is lovely. And you can also have lessons in falconry. They also have a shop in there, and owing to the fact that Fulham Palace is a working estate, was one of the largest, they sell in the little shop there everything from their gardens. So anything that you eat in the cafe is produced in the gardens. Things you can buy in the shop are locally made. It's very lovely, like its own little farm shop. Give you another little peep at the park over the railings, if you can see. It's very green. Very green and lovely. And it's very quiet today considering its gorgeousness. So I am going to continue on down Stevenage Road here until I get to the Pièce de Résistance.
vous avez regardé jouer au deuxième tour, au deuxième jeu?
So here we are, everybody. Welcome to the most beautiful ground in football in the whole world. This is Craven Cottage. This is the oldest stadium in London. We have been Fulham Football Club since 1879. Now, we may have been a football club since 1879, but it wasn't until 1896 that we played our first game here at the cottage, which consequently we won 4-0 against Minerva, interesting, in the Middlesex Cup. So when people think of Fulham Football Club, they doubtless think of the cottage, which is in the corner here by the Putney end. Now, this is actually the second Craven Cottage. The original was built by Baron William Craven in 1786 and was placed where that side is now. This building it burnt down in 1888, and the whole site was laying in waste until Fulham came along when we were homeless and claimed it and developed for ourselves. Now, in terms of that iconic building, and it is an icon because that word is overused, the cottage that you see there is the work of Sir Archibald Leach, and it's a pavilion. Now, once upon a time, especially in Scotland where Archibald Leach was from, these pavilions were very, very common, but now we think that this is the last one left. It was actually built because Archibald Leach didn't see fit to add a changing room for the players in what was the Stevenage Road stand, which is now the Johnny Haynes. More about that in a bit. So it was in 1905 that work began on this beautiful red brick and the cottage. And obviously it's grade 2 listed, because why would we ever let anybody do a thing to this? So before 1905 and this glorious work, Craven Cottage was all terracing, and it actually used materials from the excavations of Shepherd's Bush Underground Station. So the statue that stands over here is our king of Fulham, our son, our greatest son, Johnny Haynes. And it was put here in 2005 when he died very, very tragically and very prematurely. He was an England captain. He played 658 games for Fulham, and he was the first footballer to earn £100 a week. And this is also his stand Johnny Haynes' stand. It was the Stevenage Road. So we've passed the Putney end, which is where home and away supporters sit, and they're separated by a wall of very brave stewards. The hammy end down there, which is the Hammersmith end and is home to the Fulham faithful. That is the Cop of Fulham. And you have the Riverside, which is being developed still, which our chairman says is going to be a Fulham pier and will bring a lot to the area besides football. We did have a statue of Michael Jackson during the Al Fayed era, but sadly that is no longer. And the comedian, actually, my mum taught me this, the comedian Tommy Trinder, who sang the song Viva El Fulham, he was chairman, and he was desperate to keep hold of Haynes at the club, and he did. Although Haynes did say that his reasons for staying in London were a little bit beyond merely the football, and he was going out with a cabaret dancer at the time. And here's the stadium shop, which I thought I was going to take you in, but that's closed. What a shame, look at the opening hours. Oh, I've literally just missed it. Hello. I don't know if I can peek through here, sometimes you can. No. And I have come to the end. There we go. And you can take the Thames path there, which I might do in a minute actually. Get some pictures of my own again, because I can never have too many pictures of our beautiful ground. Cannot wait for the new season. It's going to be a long summer. That's the back of the hammy end. I'm going to take the Thames path. little peek into our new stand. It's looking very fancy. It'll be amazing when it's done. Restaurants, bars, looking over the river. It'll be absolutely incredible. Oh yeah, whilst I'm walking back along here, does anyone remember that song that Muhammad Al-Fayed did with Keith Allen? He used the England song Back Home after we'd had to go and play at Loftus Road. Was it like for 2 seasons? And he released that song. It was really good. I think I had it on cassette. That was good. Just for everybody's reference, my favourite Fulham player of all time, probably Steve Malbronk. I love that whole era. And I think I was around about here, Creswell Street, when I met Bobby Robson, Sir Bobby Robson. My dad was having a right good chat with him. It's so quiet, eerily. It doesn't feel right walking along here with no shouts and chants. It's not right at all. See you soon, Johnny. Send us some luck, love. I don't know if I mentioned, but the original Craven Cottage used to be a bit of a party pad, and loads of noteworthy people came for parties. This is just rumour and speculation, but apparently Queen Victoria was here. Florence Nightingale had a bit of a boogie. One more shot. There we go, guys, and there's loads of construction work going on, which is all linked to the works that they do over the summer break and for the Riverside. So I'm going to head back into Bishop's Park, maybe read for a bit whilst it's still lovely and warm. I hope you've enjoyed this stroll. Leave me a like if you think this is the best walk to a football ground. And give me a like if you support Fulham, please.
Je viens comme un livre.
just jump down there. Over here. Okay.
Thanks for watching, guys. Have a lovely evening. Bye.